So, Halloween is coming up, and around this time, I like to find rather spooky things to watch. I'm not too big of a horror movie girly, but I do like, the spooky, the unknown, and everything like that. And one genre of spooky internet media that I've really grown fond of over the years is analog horror. And I believe it's because I grew up in the analog era, or rather toward the very end of it. I was born in 1993, so I was right at that very cusp between the analog ages to when we moved to the fully digital new millennium, i.e., I'm a millennial. And as time has gone on and I've seen more analog horror series come up, I see a lot of people talking about, oh, analog horror is dead. This is the death of analog horror. Oh, it's not the same anymore. And I honestly believe it's because kind of the same reason why a lot of the 80s nostalgia wore out, and why I also think a lot of the 90s nostalgia wore out, because a lot of people who were there to experience it know the inauthenticness of it when they see it. And the people who didn't, while they may not fully understand what's off, they can kind of tell in a way, because there's something about when you were there experiencing it that you can capture a lot better than just having to go off of it like later on in life. And that's no fault to anybody like younger creating analog horror series. That's just the lot of life. But I feel like a lot of people aren't doing enough research into what analog media really is, or rather was. And they just think that analog horror equals, oh, it has to be on a VHS tape, it has to be spooky, it has to be like found footage all the time. Like, not necessarily. Like, one thing that makes Local 58 so impactful in the analog horror space is that its use of the technology. Like, back in the day with the rabbit ear TVs, and you didn't really have like no digital signal or nothing like that, like to hack a TV signal was a very impressive feat. Like, there are reasons why people are still impressed with like the Max Headroom hijacking all those many years ago, and also why they still don't know who did it. Like, back then it was like really, really impressive, because analog stuff was meant to work how it was supposed to work. Like, there had to be someone actually tampering with your video, someone actually tampering with your sound, other than the machine completely jacking it up, that caused something to change. Which is why when you see like Local 58's contingency message video, you're like, oh my god, this was a pre-recorded message in the off chance this happened, but who put the tape in? Because this isn't like, oh, I can go and like just hijack the digital signal of this channel and just change it to this. No, because specifically during that video, when it's like in either the 70s or the 80s, I think, for contingency message, it was you literally had to go get the film and play it on the TV. So somebody had to deliberately do this. It wasn't just a fluke. And I feel like that is a part of like analog horror, where there has to be some kind of deliberate thing going on, like a deliberate tampering. But because nobody is in your vicinity, or you didn't see any person go and touch it, it's like, well, who did this? What's going on? Like, broadcasting the cartoons late at night, and all of a sudden they have like a weird message about the moon, or during the emergency broadcast system, when there is someone literally actively trying to update the message, but where is it coming from? Is it coming from the TV station? Is it coming from somewhere else? Like, is somebody managed to hijack that? And given the technology that was limited back at that time, like, how were they able to do it? That kind of stuff is what freaks you out a lot. Because while you can have really good stories that kind of use analog media as like a way to convey it, i.e. like the Walton Files, other times the use of analog media just makes it confusing. Like, why are you bothering to do this? Or it doesn't make sense in the world, like with Urban Spook. Like, Urban Spook's story is so shock value flimsy that that you start breaking apart the use of the analog media in the world. Like, the police would not make tapes like this to send out to the public with such graphic detail and do all of this stuff. Have you looked at a PSA from the police from that time period? Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you got to do research into this stuff if you're going to include it into your world, at least to make it make sense. If your story isn't going to make sense, at least have the world building with the technology make a little bit. I think that's why people also gravitate toward the Mandela catalog, because while the story is solid, the use of the analog material works as well, like the tampering of the Jesus cartoon, the recordings from the people who were replaced by alternates, the atmosphere of it. The analog media adds to the story, like with the back rooms, like that adds to the telling of the story, and it functions like analog media should. And I feel like if we want to get analog horror back on a track that people feel where it's more authentic, I think that needs to happen. People need to do more research on analog technology from whatever time period they want to go back to. Like, there's a reason why Petscop, although I don't consider that to be analog horror, but Petscop was like such a really big thing when it came out, because the game worked within the limits of the PlayStation. Like, it worked within the limits of the graphical software that was available at that time, which made the inconsistencies, which made the glitches, which made the interference feel even more suspenseful and jarring and just like on edge, because oh my god, like, this shouldn't be able to do this on a PlayStation like from 1998. Like, this should not be happening. So yeah, this is just a quick ramble about that, because I'm very passionate about analog horror. I might not be passionate about any other aspects of horror, but that I very much am. But I do look forward to indulging in a few series that I've been looking forward to finally diving into during this holiday season. And yeah, if you have any analog horror series that you'd like me to check out, please recommend it down below. But this has been a Rambly Quick Sips, and I'll see you all later. Bye.